Samsung says the chairman of Samsung Electronics, Lee Kun-hee, is now in stable condition after suffering a heart attack. Will it, and how will this impact future management of the group? We get one view. The top office says President Park Geun-hye plans to apologize to her country for the Sewol ferry disaster in a public address sometime soon. Rising tensions in Ukraine after pro-Moscow rebels declared a victory in a referendum on self-rule for eastern Ukraine. Hello and good evening to those of you in Asia. I am Kang Tae-ri in Seoul. Samsung says Samsung Electronics Chairman Lee Kun-hee is now in stable condition after suffering a heart attack reported over the weekend. But his health complications have the group on high alert. Kim Min-ji reports.
The failing health of Lee Kun-hee, the chairman of Samsung Electronics, has yet again emerged as a massive concern to the management of the sprawling Samsung Group. He underwent an emergency medical procedure at the Samsung Medical Center on Sunday after suffering cardiac arrest. Hospital officials say the 72-year-old is stable and showing signs of improvement.
The chairman showed symptoms of heart failure and underwent an emergency procedure which involved a stent placement. He's now in a stable condition and recovering.
Samsung's top executives, including officials from the group's corporate strategy office, visited the hospital and held meetings to discuss the next steps. Experts speculate Samsung will not take any immediate action, but they'll keep a close eye on the situation for the time being. In 2008, when he gave up his position as Samsung Group chairman after a special inquiry which found him guilty of tax evasion and breach of duty, the group implemented several management reforms, but did not enter an emergency business management mode. He returned to the front lines of management in March 2010. His ailing health, however, will likely have a substantial effect on the group's management as he makes key management decisions and initiates business reshuffles. The group recently underwent a major shakeup, transferring executives from the corporate strategy office to Samsung Electronics. The company is expected to take some special steps to carry out the so-called MAC management put forward by Lee. MAC management refers to making fundamental changes to the firm in order to maintain its position as a top global corporation. The chairman has a history of respiratory problems dating back to the late 1990s, when he had surgery for lung cancer. He was also hospitalized last summer with symptoms of light pneumonia. With Lee's health problems taking a turn for the worst, Samsung is also expected to accelerate its corporate succession to Lee's 3 children. Lee's only son, Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong, will likely succeed him eventually. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
So how is the market taking the development? And in our earlier newscast, James Rooney from Advanced Capital Partners shared his viewpoint, and this is what he had to say.
The second generation in a number of forms is already in place, and there's a strong and deep management bench to lead the company. So I think we should not expect to see anything dramatic or drastic happen within Samsung in the near term. The real question is how Samsung directs itself into the longer future. It's on a competitive playing field that is very challenging. There are plenty of other big companies that it has to face up to every day. The world around it is changing.
And in other news, nearly 1 month has passed since the doomed Sewol ferry sank, and investigators believe they're edging closer to uncovering the real owner of the sunken vessel. But it's not proving to be easy, with those closest to the man in question refusing to cooperate. Connie Kim reports.
Investigators believe they are narrowing in on the real owner of the sunken Sewol ferry, which they believe is the key to unlocking what may have caused the accident. Key figures associated with Cheongjin Marine Company, the practical owner of the ferry, have not been cooperating with the investigation. Prosecutors summoned in Yoo Dae-gyun, the first son of Cheongjin owner Yoo Byung-eun, for questioning Monday morning, but he failed to appear. If he had shown up, they would have asked him about his involvement in Sewol Group, under which Cheongjin operates. The prosecution has issued an arrest warrant for Yoo to force him in. Yoo currently holds majority shares in 3 Sewol Group affiliates. He was paid nearly $10,000 a month for his duties, and the prosecution suspects he is deeply involved with the day-to-day operations. Investigators are also looking at him on charges of tax evasion. Prosecutors did have a chance to talk with another member of the Yu family on Sunday. Yu Byung-il, the older brother of Cheongjin owner Yu Byung-an, was questioned overnight on his possible involvement in the construction of the Sewol Ferry and the business operations of Cheongjin Marine Company. Yu Byung-an is likely to be summoned sometime this week. While investigators hone in on the ferry operator and owner, the search for those still missing in the accident continues off Jindo Island in southwestern Korea. Fast tidal currents have made it difficult for rescue personnel to find the 29 passengers still unaccounted for. Operations are focused on the 3rd and 4th floor of the vessel, but with the threat of the 4th floor collapsing, authorities say divers are looking for a new way inside by breaking through the walls of the vessel. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
And President Park Geun-hye has decided to make an official apology to the country in a public address for the devastating Sewol ferry disaster sometime soon. Choi Yoo-sun has more.
When President Park Geun-hye addresses the nation in the coming days, she's expected to apologize to the Korean people for the government's failure to prevent the Sewol ferry tragedy. She has apologized a number of times since the accident nearly a month ago, but has been criticized for not making one directly to the public. In her speech, President Park will also lay out the details of a new master plan to bolster national safety and a new ministry she's previously pledged to establish to oversee emergency response and management.
재난 안전의 컨트롤 타워에 대해서는 전담 부처를 설치해서 사회 재난과 자연재해 관리를 일원화해 효율적이고 강력한 통합 재난 대응 체계를 구축하는 것이 바람직하다는 결론에 이르렀습니다.
At a surprise meeting with her senior secretaries on Sunday, the president also discussed ways to bring about sweeping reforms to public service and root out irregularities that are blamed for having caused a deadly ferry accident. It's a sentiment President Park first iterated 2 weeks after the Sewol ferry sank.
이번에는 반드시 과거로부터 이어져 온 잘못된 문제들을 바로잡고 새로운 대한민국의 틀을 다시 잡아서 국민들의 신뢰를 되찾고 안심하고 살 수 있는 대한민국을 만드는 길에 나설 것입니다.
There's also speculation about reshuffles within the cabinet and the presidential office, especially as a number of officials have been slammed publicly for inconsiderate behavior since the Sewol accident. The president's address will likely come either Tuesday, when a cabinet meeting is scheduled, or towards the end of the week, when the prosecution and police are expected to announce an interim report on their joint ferry disaster probe. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
We're used to harsh rhetoric thrown around between the two Koreas, but some uncharacteristically strong words from South Korea's defense ministry today calling for the North to, quote, disappear as soon as possible. Hwang Sung-hee tells us what inspired those strong remarks.
South Korea's defense ministry ramped up its criticism of North Korea Monday, even going as far as to say the regime must disappear soon. Defense Ministry spokesperson Kim Min-seok said during a press briefing that North Korea is not a real country and exists solely for the benefit of one person, referring to its young dictator Kim Jong-un. He said the North has no human rights or public freedoms and added it should not even be regarded as a country. The comments, which came as a response to North Korea's denial of responsibility over the 3 drones found near the inter-Korean border earlier this year, will likely draw the ire of Pyongyang. While South Korea has been highly critical of North Korea's nuclear ambitions, its latest remarks contain much stronger language than usual. Seoul tries to avoid commenting on anything that could be interpreted as a collapse of the North Korean regime over worries of provoking Pyongyang. The two Koreas had agreed earlier this year to end all cross-border slandering, but North Korea has not complied, hurling sexist and racist remarks against the leaders of South Korea and the United States ever since President Obama's visit to Seoul late last month. The two leaders had vowed then to stand shoulder to shoulder against any North Korean provocations. Renewed inter-Korean tensions are sparking concerns of a fourth nuclear test by North Korea in protest of what it calls U.S. and South Korean hostilities. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Korea's ruling party has nominated its Seoul mayoral candidate for the June 4th election. The name is Chung Mong-jun, a tycoon turned politician. Ji Myung-gil has more on his profile.
When voters in Seoul take to the polls next month to cast their ballots for mayor, the name under the Century Party banner will read Chung Mong-jun. The seven-term lawmaker and former presidential candidate beat out former Prime Minister Kim Hwang-sik and Supreme Council member Lee Hae-hoon in a primary on Monday at Seoul's Olympic Gymnastics Hall. After earning the nomination, Chung pledged to go out and win come June 4th.
I will fight to win back Seoul's mayoral seat in the upcoming June 4th local elections. I will provide more quality jobs and improve welfare systems for Seoul's citizens. I will work for President Park Geun-hye, our Saenduri party, and for the people who love our country.
The business tycoon, the largest shareholder in Hyundai Heavy Industries, said he had a vision to make Seoul the economic, cultural, and tourism center of East Asia. He also said he wanted to make the capital a more attractive place to live, pointing out that the capital's population has fallen below the 10 million mark this year. Chung was selected through a process that gives the votes of party delegates, party members, and ordinary citizens 80% weight. Opinion polls accounted for 20%. Chung will face off in the race against incumbent Park Geun-hye of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy. With the contenders for Seoul mayor decided, Chung and Park are expected to hit the campaign trail next week as they look to secure a 4-year term running the nation's capital. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Kang Chae-ri for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on ARIRANG TV.
Human Rights Council headquarters in Geneva on Thursday, finding ways to persuade. Korea's GDP per capita continues to rise, edging up one notch in the rankings to 33rd in the world as of last year. The IMF says Korea's GDP per person stood at around $24,300 last year, up $1,700 on year. Luxembourg topped the list at over $110,000, followed by Norway, Qatar, and Switzerland. Korea's nominal GDP remained in the top 15 in the world for the fifth consecutive year at $1.2 trillion last year. The Korean won has been hovering around its highest level in nearly 6 years, and all signs suggest it will remain strong for the coming months. Hwang Ji-hye reports.
Expectations are growing of a stronger Korean won, which is already trading at the 1,020 level against the U.S. dollar. Market watchers say that by the end of this year, the won is likely to breach the psychologically important 1,000 level. The Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi UFJ predicts the Korean won to trade at 975 against the dollar, while the American banking company Wells Fargo expects it to trade at 990. Analysts attribute the strength of the won to the widely shared perception that the Korean currency is undervalued. The IMF has recently said it believed the won is undervalued by as much as 8%, and that the country has an unusually large current account surplus, which accounted for some 6% of the nation's gross domestic product last year. The U.S. Treasury Department called on Korea last month to limit foreign exchange intervention to exceptional circumstances. While there are concerns that the won is gaining strength too quickly, some analysts point out a strong dollar later this year could reverse the trend.
The recovery in the U.S. economy is back on track, and by September this year, when the Federal Reserve plans to end its stimulus programs, market expectations of a rate rise will mount. pushing up the value of the dollar.
With slowing exports to China, Park adds that even if the local currency does in fact dip to below the 1,000 level against the greenback, it will remain there only temporarily. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Internet of Things is the idea of connecting things that we use in our daily lives to the internet. It's probably one of the hottest and most talked about industries these days, and the Korean government says it's spending big for Korea's growth in this field. Na Hyun-kyung reports.
$36 million from the government and another $12 million from private sectors. The Korean government is gearing up to foster new growth engines in the domestic technology market. Microelectromechanical system or MEMS sensor chips are one of the core technologies in the Internet of Things market, which envisions connecting everyday items such as phones, fridges, and boilers to the internet. The MEMS sensors embedded in our devices help analyze data by collecting and registering changes of information such as temperature, light, sound, and motion. However, most Korean companies currently import the chips because they don't have the technology to produce them yet. And that's why the government is planning to inject some $20 million by 2019 into developing and manufacturing more of these chips domestically. Korea hopes to produce more than $220 million worth of MEMS sensors by the year 2020. That's a threefold increase from what the country manufactured last year. Another $16 million will go into developing devices that transfer data collected from sensors to long-distance control centers. Korea is not able to produce such devices yet, but the government is rolling out ambitious plans to create a manufacturing volume worth more than $500 million by 2020. Some industry experts wonder aloud whether the government's targets are realistic, but others are hopeful that Korea will be at the forefront of conceptualizing the Internet of Things in real life by utilizing its state-of-the-art IT and mobile telecommunications technologies. Na Hyun-kyung, ARIRANG News.
Pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine have declared victory after pushing forward with referendum votes on Sunday. Paul, tell us more about the final results there.
The preliminary vote count was announced just 2 hours after the polls closed in eastern cities to decide self-determination for those regions. Pro-Moscow separatists say residents overwhelmingly supported their cause, but witnesses say scenes at the polling stations were chaotic, with few checks in place to ensure their integrity. Meanwhile, Ukraine's acting president, Alexander Turchinov, has condemned the unofficial elections as a farce. Our Kwon So-ah reports.
It was the outcome everyone expected, but it's one that will face resistance from many inside and outside of Ukraine. The referendum vote on self-rule in two of the tensest regions in eastern Ukraine closed Sunday night local time. Separatists claim that preliminary results show nearly 90% are in favor of self-governance in the region of Donetsk. Voter turnout there was around 75%. Early counts in Luhansk show about 80% in favor of self-rule.
When I saw that the interim government had taken such illegal actions toward us, I decided to vote for myself.
People in Kiev, however, are furious and are calling for national unity.
This is not a referendum, but a lie. It's absolute Russia's provocation. Russia just wants to copy the script of Crimea's independence and separate Donetsk and Luhansk from Ukraine.
At least one person was shot dead west of Donetsk city as armed men supporting the Kiev government tried to stop the vote. The final results will be announced on Monday. The legitimacy of the vote has been called into question, not only because it was held among a minority of the Ukrainian population, but also because people were seen voting more than once, while some areas didn't even have voting booths in place. The US and the European Union say they won't accept the outcome, condemning the vote as illegal. The interim government in Kiev has called the ballot self-destructive and says the focus should be on the nationwide elections set for May 25th. Western leaders agreed that if that vote does not take place, there will be consequences, including stronger sanctions against Russia. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
And Thailand is facing another wave of violent attacks from insurgents there. Paul, how much damage has been done?
At least one person has died and 10 others severely injured. Police say there were more than 30 cases of shootings, bombings, and arson on Sunday in the southern part of the country, which closely borders Malaysia. Authorities suspect Muslim separatists are behind the attacks, which targeted shopping malls and electrical towers. Thailand is predominantly Buddhist, but southern provinces such as Pattani and Yali are home to a Muslim majority where rebel groups have launched a decades-old resistance against the government. The opening of peace talks with some of the rebels last year had raised hopes, but those negotiations were delayed as the caretaker government shifted its focus to protests in Bangkok. Over 5,700 people have died due to the rebel attacks since 2004.
And turning to India now, where final voting is taking place in the country's general elections, how many voters are we looking at?
More than 66 million people are eligible to cast their ballots on this last day of this marathon election, which began on April 7th. All eyes are on 3 electorally critical states, which include Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and West Bengal. Early opinion polls show voters have turned against the ruling Congress in favor of the opposition's Prime Minister nominee, Narendra Modi.
Every out of 5 years, the Lok Sabha election takes place, so that's why I have also come to cast my vote.
What is your demand?
My demand is development of the country.
After all is said and done, about 815 million people are expected to have voted in the world's largest exercise of democracy, with the final results due to be announced on May 16.
And Paul, before I let you go, I want to talk about Mother's Day, a very special day indeed. And many families in the U.S. are taking this special occasion to show their support for the hundreds of missing schoolgirls in Nigeria.
That's right, Chetty. Mother's Day was somber in many cities across the U.S. as people rallied and held vigils for the safe return of more than 200 girls abducted last month. In California, Virginia, and Texas, communities came together, lighting candles, holding signs, and chanting, "Bring back our girls."
We need to find our girls, and I want to help, and I want everyone else to as well. I'm Nigerian, these are my people, and it doesn't even matter that I'm Nigerian. These girls need to be found, and I can't believe they haven't been yet.
The Nigerian government, meanwhile, is facing criticism over its slow response to the kidnappings and mass killings by Boko Haram militants, which have claimed thousands of lives. Chetty?
All right, Paul, thanks for those updates. Paul E. there at the News Center, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours. Now let's get to weather updates with our Pogyang at the Weather Center. Pogyang, it was a beautiful spring day here in Seoul, at least today. How is tomorrow looking at?
Well, it looks like we'll be able to enjoy beautiful sunny conditions throughout the week. First, taking a look at the current conditions, the nation is under the influence of a high-pressure system that is moving from the west to east from Shanghai. This is why we're seeing clear skies across the map. Now, tomorrow's daytime high in Seoul is forecast to jump about 6 degrees compared to today, while Daegu is expected to peak at a hot 31 degrees. Otherwise, strong wind watches have been issued for Gangwon-do province. Looking ahead at tomorrow's readings, Seoul tops out at 27 degrees, while Gwangju and Busan reach 28 and 25. Other regions such as Jeju starts off the day at 15 degrees with a high of 24, while Dokdo and Mount Kumgang top out at 19 and 16. Now, please be aware of the big gap in temperatures between the day and night. That's all I have for you at this hour, but I'll be back with more after 10.
And we'll leave it there for now, but we'll see you back here at 10 p.m. Korea time. Thank you for watching.